Good afternoon. We're speaking on Treaty 6 territory, and I'd like to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection and history with the land. I'm joined by our leader, Rachel Notley. It has been 7 weeks since the UCP promised Albertans a rebate on their electricity bill, but they haven't delivered. And it's been 12 weeks since the UCP promised Albertans a rebate on their natural gas bill, but they haven't delivered on that either. According to Associate Minister assigned to the files, Dale Nally, Albertans will be waiting at least another 2 months for their $50 electricity rebate, which his own UCP colleague calls paltry. And he has no idea when Albertans might see any help on their natural gas bill. This is unacceptable. The UCP has botched the utility file from the very beginning, with the removal of the electricity rate cap we put in place to protect Alberta families and businesses. Associate Minister Nally even bragged about how he had no plans to lift a finger to help anyone with their electricity bills. On natural gas, their original rebate plan wouldn't come online until next winter, and only at prices that were far beyond their own projections at the time. Meanwhile, Alberta families are paying hundreds of dollars more a month than they did just a few months ago, or this time last year. The finance minister even told his constituents that he couldn't afford his own bill. But for all their promises, the UCP has no idea how to actually give people a rebate. Now, in late April, the UCP has brought forward legislation that they say will give them the authority to do this. We've reviewed Bill 18 in detail, and it's not good enough. We have a plan to make it better, and I'll introduce Rachel Notley to describe that plan.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and thank you so much for your determination and incredibly hard work on this issue over the last many months. Utility bills are creating real hardships for Alberta families and Alberta businesses right now, and they are stacking up on top of a number of other rising monthly costs. Inflation is driving up the price of everything from food to children's clothing. The UCP is forcing Albertans to pay more income tax, more property tax, more school fees, more tuition, more interest on student debt, and of course more for car insurance. As Kathleen mentioned, the UCP also removed price protections we put in place on electricity bills. Now, those bills are skyrocketing, and this is putting some families at risk of disconnection. Kathleen and I drafted a bill to extend the winter ban on utility shutoffs through to next year, but the UCP refused to even debate it. It says so much about that party. While they're enjoying billions of dollars in resource revenue, they can't figure out how to give an Alberta family a $50 rebate. And they refuse to protect them from losing their heat and power while they try to figure it out. That's just not good enough. We have a plan that will get Albertans real help real quick. We'll be presenting these NDP amendments later today in the legislature. First up, these rebates must be in Albertans' pockets no later than May 31st. The electricity rebates, that is. That's 5 weeks from today. More than enough time to figure it out. As Kathleen noted, it's also more than 4 months after the UCP originally started promising some type of rebate. Secondly, any future use of this act must provide rebates to Albertans within 30 days of being authorized under the Act. Third, the government must ban utility shutoffs through this year and at least until a rebate program is actually working and activated. So let's recap. That's a May 31st deadline for these current rebates that Albertans are still waiting on, a 30-day deadline for future rebates, and a ban on disconnections. These 3 amendments mean real help, real quick for Alberta families and Alberta businesses. We'll also be calling for use of this Rebate Act to trigger an audit and a review of these price spikes. A study from the U of C last week showed that the main driver of these punishing bills is the markup from utility companies made possible by the UCP removing our rate cap. The government's making money through incredibly high energy pricing. The utility companies are making money through all this, but families and small businesses, well, they're not making money. They're losing it quickly. And I have a real problem with that. Albertans also have a right to answers, and we're going to build that into the Act. Now, before I take your questions, let me just say that it is absolutely extraordinary how much time the UCP has wasted without getting a handle on this issue. The fact is, Albertans have been paying these punitive bills for months, since last year in the fall, while the UCP first refused to do anything about it and then moved into a state of extended dithering. It's obvious that this government's focus just is not on Alberta families and Alberta businesses right now. It is, unfortunately, focused on their own internal drama. If the Premier had spent a fraction of the time on this file as he spends on trying to save his job, well, all of this would have been done months ago, and Alberta families and businesses would be enjoying the benefit of that relief. So, to Albertans, when you open that next heart-stopping utility bill, that is the price of UCP infighting and incompetence. I commit to Albertans that an NDP government, led by me, will always be focused on what matters to Alberta families and businesses. The amendments that we're talking about today are part of our down payment on that promise. I hope the UCP can see sense and help us pass them. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, and we'll start with questions in the room.
Oh, no mic.
Chambers just put out a release saying 78% of businesses are concerned about rising electricity costs, 73% rising natural gas costs. Is there a program, does that have to be a separate program for businesses to put in place, or is there something that they can be helped out through these proposed programs?
Well, I think right now what we've heard from the UCP is just a $50 rebate, which of course for many businesses would be of no value. So then the question becomes, they need to be working on something that will provide additional support to some businesses, and they'll need to put that together. So we don't have a concrete idea of what that would be. The current bill allows them to create that. But the point is that they need to act on it quickly. And so what we're here today asking for is amendments to the bill that would speed along that process. Because yes, Alberta families and are facing these major costs, and so too are many, many different business owners.
What are the risks of these rising prices on economic growth in Alberta?
Well, these rising prices are part and parcel of the incredible level of inflation that small businesses and regular Alberta families are experiencing each and every day. And when you when you add it on to incredible growth in car insurance, when you look at rising income taxes because of the tax on inflation, which of course makes more and more money for the government as inflation goes up, when you look at the tuition costs rising, when you look at property taxes rising, when you look at school fees rising, we're impacting businesses and families. And as you do that, the economy will start to slow. And this is not a time that we want to see that kind of inflation. The other thing that happens is that the gap between very, very well-off folks and the rest of us grows. And that becomes a major drag on economic growth as well.
Any other questions in the room? Go to questions on the phone. A reminder to press *9 if you're joining us on the phone. Raise hand if you're joining us via Zoom. If you could say your name and your outlet at the top. We'll go to our first caller.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is Lisa Johnson from the Journal. I'm wondering if you see any practical hurdles in terms of rolling this cash out by May 31st. I know that the government has mentioned that they've had to work closely with utility companies in order to be able to to do this? I mean, in terms of power supply, like, are there practical hurdles here that your amendments would address?
You know, here's what we know about this, is that we're not looking at a lot of utility companies, because notwithstanding, we're talking about the electricity rebates, first of all, that were promised 7 or 8 weeks ago. And notwithstanding the government's claims to the opposite, we actually only have 2 or 3 major players in the market here in Alberta. So I think it's absolutely possible to get those rebates out the door that quickly. The key is that the government has to be held accountable to that deadline. They need to be prepared to legislatively use the authority they have to make sure that those rebates get out. And in the meantime, we cannot have companies claim they don't know how to issue a rebate at the same time that they apparently do still have both the authority and the ability to cut off people's utilities. Doesn't make sense. But on the electricity rebate matter, it's not a complicated issue, and it should be able to be done quite quickly. The natural gas rebate, that is a bit more complicated, for sure, but, and that's why we're talking about 30 days after the Treasury Board actually comes up with a plan. But nonetheless, there should be no reason that they can't get it done within, by May 31st.
Any follow-up, Lisa?
No, thanks, that's good.
Do one more pass for questions. Star 9 if you're joining us on the phone. Raise hand if you're joining us via Zoom. And seeing none, that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.